Hello there, Larry here. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be editing this picture with you that I took somewhere this year. And before diving into the edits, I'm going to take you through how I took this image. So one trick is to just go deeper into the model's eye, because you can always see how the image was took. So here you can see that I used an octabox that had a grid on it, serving as a main light, and below here I had a reflector that was bouncing back light to fill in the shadows down here on the model's face. And behind here I actually had a black backdrop with a speed light. So I had a speed light right behind the model, which was gelled red. So when it produces the sort of red light effects to act as a red backdrop. So from camera raw, I'm not going to do much. I'm just going to open the image. And also, if you would like to edit with me, check the description section. I would make a raw image of this file available so that you can also practice the image editing if you'd want to. So basically I'm going to be retouching the image here with the frequency separation method, but I'm going to do this in a reverse version. So what normally we do is we do the frequency separation, then we do dodging and burning, or then after that we try to blend in the colors of the model skin. So here I'm going to do it a bit in a reverse version. What I'm going to do last from the editing perspective is more or less a frequency separation. What I'm going to do now is to try to blend in the colors of the model skin. So what I'll do here is a trick that I learned from PS Design. You can check his YouTube channel. He has a lot of cool tricks there. So I'm just going to, sorry, this was from Pix Imperfect actually. So I'm going to start the new layer. And in the new layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press B to pick the normal brush. And I'm going to change the flow here to 100. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample different sections of the model's face. So I'm going to sample the highlights. I'm going to sample the midtones, and I'm going to sample the shadows. So the highlights is just going to be the most, more or less the brightest spot of the image, which I would take to be probably here. I mean, you don't need to be perfect. You can always change this later. And also from the shadows, I'm going to take a darker spot. I think this side here where her nose, this side is very dark. So this will be my shadows. And the midtones, I'm just going to take a color in between. I think my highlights here is a bit too magenta-ish. Let me check here. Yeah, I think this is better. This is more like a lighter tone of brown. After that, I'm also going to teach you how to correct this if you are not that confident with your color selection. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come down here and select the gradients map. And I'm going to bring the gradients map below my selected colors. So here, I'm just going to click on the gradients map here, click here, and sample my colors. So first I'm going to start with the first color. When you click this, you come here, you select the first color. Just one trick that I want to teach you here, or point of correction. Sometimes it happens that you would not be able to select the color when you come here because you selected here. So if you select the mask, and when you come to select the color, you realize that it will not be working. So make sure that you select the mask, so not the mask, but the main tool here, and click to select your color. So let's select the first color, which is going to be this one here. It's actually already loaded because we had it in the color picker. So take note of the brightness here. We have 87%. So we put this 87% in the location. And we're going to pick our second color, which is this one here. The brightness is 78. So I'm going to put in 78 here. I'm going to pick my third color, this one here. The brightness is 31. So I'm going to put in 31 here. And I'm going to smoothen out the transitions. Here you can see the transition is not so smooth. So this is more or less a better transition. I'll just delete this because I don't need that there. So this is going to be my transition. And when you're ready, just click OK. What I'm going to do now is, of course, I don't want this color tone all over the image. So I'm just going to invert this mask here by pressing Ctrl I. And I'm going to brush in where I want to have this effect. So this is basically going to be on the model skin. Sorry, let me cancel this here. I can save it just to keep the same version. Okay, so just with the brush tool, you can press B on the keyboard to select the brush tool, and I'm going to brush this in. So the effect is going to be a lot here, but don't worry, we're going to correct this later with opacity. So just brushing in where on the model skin. The reason why I increase the opacity is that when the opacity is low, you don't really see where you are painting. So here I take the opacity to the maximum so that I can see the maximum effect, and later I can tune the opacity to the way I want this to be. Don't worry, I know I'm painting wrong size, but when you make a mistake, just press X to flip between the visible and hidden. So here I doesn't want to have this here, so I'm just going to press X to clean this here, and I'm going to continue my regular painting. So here, so I'm just going to paint all sections where I see the skin or wherever I would want the recoloring to take effect. Here's going to be pretty easy because the whole section is filled with the model's skin. So I just brush this in here. And don't worry about this section here. I'm going to crop in the major. I'm going to crop into the image anyway. So all those sections would be gone. So X to clean this. You can reduce the size of the brush by pressing the square bracket. So the left square bracket is to reduce, and the right square bracket is to increase. I'm going to keep brushing, flip X. It's easier sometimes when you're working with the keyboard shortcuts because it increases your flow, you know, it speeds up your work. So you can get your hands busy all the time. So here you can see that I've basically painted, sorry, I can clean this up, on all sections that I want to paint. Sorry, X, B, select the brush. I'm going to keep this here as well. I'm not sure if this was her skin or if this is a mistake here. So select the B. I can correct this later. Let me take this off for now. Okay, that was not supposed to be there. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reduce the opacity to a toning which I would like. So what we will have to do first here is select the gradient map here, and you can change the color to the options to color so that you just take the color from what we created. So you can see that here I didn't paint this section here, so I go to press B. I'm going to paint in that section here as well. Okay, this is fine. You can control where you've painted by pressing Alt and clicking on the mask. So you can see that here, for instance, that I forgot to paint here, so I can correct this. And also sections of a face, forgot to paint, so I can clean up all this as well. I believe all this was part of the face that I missed. Sections of a nose. Okay, so I'm just going to press Alt, click again to get back in there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reduce the opacity. Of course, I don't want the effect so intense. So just come down here, up here, and just reduce the opacity. So I think 57 is fine. So this is before, this is after. You see that it really gives you a better distribution of the colors of this, or sort of unifies the model's skin color. If you see that it's too much, you can always just reduce a little bit. So this is skin recoloration. I'll just name this layer here skin. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do a dodging and burning. So this dodging of burning method I learned from PS Design. You can also check his YouTube page. I can put a link down here in the description menu. And I really like it because it's more or less like an automatic dodging and burning. It's not perfect, but of course it makes the work way easier. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create two curves. So the first curve, I'm just going to change the blending options to multiply, and I'm going to call, because it's darker, of course, I'm going to call this burn. You can duplicate this burn layer and change this blending option to screen, and also this is going to be the brighter area, so I'll call this dodge. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to group these two layers. You can select the two of them and press Ctrl G, or you can also click here to group this. Then after that, I'm going to introduce a mask. After you introduce the mask, click on the mask, go to image, then go to apply image, and just apply 50% opacity. Then click OK. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to group these two layers again and call this dodge and burn. So I really like this because it also increases more or less like a pop, like a contrast, a better contrast into the image, what I really like. So you can see this is before, this is after. You can see that we have a very nice contrast in the image where we really accentuate the darker spots of the image and the brighter spots of the image. So what you can do if you want to change this further, I can go deeper into the burning options, double click here, and I want to apply this effect only to the shadows of the image. So I'm just going to take this effect from the highlights. So you can press, you see that the effect is basically being taken off brighter spots of the image here, and it's only going to be applied in the shadow section of the image. So to make the transition better, you press Alt and click and drag here to smoothen out the transition. I can bring this here to make the transition even better. So this is fine with me. Press OK, do the same for the dodge. So the dodge, we also want to take it from the shadows. We want it to be only in the brighter side. So we're going to take this away from the shadows. This is fine. So the effect is leaving this section here, and it's only going to be applied here. So here I'm also going to press Alt and smoothen out the transition. Okay. So let's, yeah, I think this is fine. So press OK. So the effect is very strong. So what you can do here is to reduce the opacity. So I think 50% is fine with me. 50% is pretty decent. So this is before, this is after. This is before, this is after. You can see that it darkens the image a little bit, but we can correct this later. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check this here again and probably take only a subtle version of it. So this is where we are now. So basically, like I said, what do people normally do, or what I also sometimes normally do, is I do the frequency separation, then I do my dodging and burning and my skin recoloration. So here I did it in the reverse version. So let's see where we were. This is where we started. Then we first, I'm going to go deeper so you can see this easier. Then we did the uniforming of the skin color. Then after that, we did the dodging and burning. So what I call an automatic dodging and burning. So now let's start with our frequency separation. So the frequency separation is very easy to do. To facilitate the process, I can put a link here where you can just download an action and just import into Photoshop to do this for you. So after you import the frequency separation action, you can just come here. You'd see you have two layers: frequency separation 8-bit and frequency separation 16-bit. Because I'm starting with a raw image, I'm just going to start with a 16-bit. And here I'm going to start with the radius of about 10. So I'm going to click OK here. So you see that it generates two layers for you. So the first layer is a low frequency separation that contains just the color. I'm going to zoom in deeper for you to see here. And also the second layer. So the second layer is used normally if you want to correct some color, some imperfections with respect to color from the model's skin by just picking some sections of the skin and repainting in different places. And the layer that you see here, I can turn off this so that you see this better. So this layer is just the texture layer. It normally doesn't contain any color information. It's just a texture. So when you combine all this two, you have a frequency sep layer which is generated. So what I normally do is I turn off the high frequency separation layer and I just start with the low frequency. So I use my Mr. Brush tool for most of my frequency separation. So you come here, right click and choose Mixer Brush. One keyboard shortcut here is you can also press B to select the brush tool, and you can switch by pressing Shift B to move between the normal brush and the Mixer Brush. So my Mixer Brush tool, I normally use the following settings up here: the wetness 10%, the load 75, max 90, flow 100. So to start with it, I'm going to start with a low frequency separation, which I'm going to select here. And I normally like to work in a clean spot without all these toolbars here. So I just press F and F again to get rid of all of them. So what I'm going to do here is, so press Z. When you press Z, you zoom in. You click and drag right to zoom in, and click and drag right to zoom out. So when you see me doing this, this is what I'm actually doing. I just press Z to bring the magnifying tool and just move forward and back with the mouse. And also, I sometimes flip the image when I'm retouching. So when you press R and you click and turn right, it flips the image the other way, anti-clockwise, it flips the image the other way around. So if you see me doing this, this is how I do it. So to start with, I'm going to press B. My mixer brush tool is already selected. I can check this again by pressing escape. Okay, I'm selected. I'm on the low frequency separation layer. I'm just going to press F to start to go back there. So press B, increase the size of the brush a little bit. I'm going to take this back a little bit, press B, and I'm going to smoothen the colors. So what the mixer frequency separation is actually just does is separates the layers into two so that you have the color information and you have the texture information. And with the aid of the mixer brush, you just smoothen the colors. I really like the mixer brush too because it really mixes the color nicely. It's a bit tedious when you start working with the mixer brush too because it takes a lot of time to get used to, but of course, if you keep practicing, it gets better. So you can see here is that I just blended in the colors. So the imperfections in the skin comes as a result of different transitions between the highlights and the shadows. So when you use and there's also different colorations on different spots on the skin color. So when you use a mixer brush tool, you just blend in these colors and it gives a more pleasing effect to the eye. So here I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to go back to my mixer brush tool and I'm going to continue painting. So what you have to take note of the fact when you're using the mixer brush tool, which I always show you in all my videos, is that you make sure you don't brush from a darker, so from a shadow into a highlight. I can do this for you to see. You see, this is a very bad effect you can see here because we want to keep the shadows in the shadows and the highlights in the highlights. So just brush shadows into shadows and brush highlights into highlights. So don't mix the two. So here we can see I have highlights, so I'm just brushing in highlights here. I'm going to zoom in back a little bit. I'm going to come here. I'm going to flip the image a little bit because it's easier for me to go on vertical strokes than horizontal strokes. So sometimes I just flip the image to give me a better feel. So you can see that I'm blending in the colors. I'm going to flip and go to the other side. Set to zoom in. Press the B for the brush and continue brushing. So here, I'm going to correct this bit here as well. Brushing a little bit. That was too much. So I'm going to touch every single spot. So what sometimes I do is I forget to touch these tiny spots here. So here I'm going to touch every single thing I see here. I'm not going to leave any stone unturned. So my tablet wasn't responding, so I had to restart my Photoshop. So I'm going to go back to the brush tool just to be sure. Okay, this is collected. I'm just going to keep painting or keep mixing. So with these very tiny spots, I like to reduce the size of the brush so that I don't really mess up, because if the brush is too big, you can see that if I use a brush this size, here I have a highlight and here I have it, and I would just be doing it wrongly. So I reduce the size of the brush depending on the area of application. Okay, I think this is fine. So what I'll go now, I'll go to the model's hands. So I'll flip this like I always say to make it easier for me when I'm applying. Okay, put this. Same thing here. So just use the keys, like the shortcut keys, the square brackets to reduce the size and increase the size of the brush. So here you can see there's a shadow, there is a highlight, so reduce the size of the brush just to the area of application. Okay, so now let's press exit to go back. So you reset the image with respect to the rotation. I'm going to press exit to go out, and here I can see that the blend in here is not so perfect. I don't know if you can see that as well. So this side you can see that the skin didn't blend in so well. I'm going to correct this, flip right, and I think what happens is that I picked too much of the darker side here. So just press B, and I'm going to blend this in to correct this. So out, resets, then zoom out. You can also press Ctrl-0 to fill the screen. And I'm going to turn on the high frequency separation layer. So let's go deeper into the image to see what we have done so far. So this is before, this is after, classical edit that we've done. So right now I'm done with the high frequency or the low frequency. I'm going to go in to work on the texture layer. This I would use to correct these hairs here. So I'm going to select the clone stamp tool by pressing S or by clicking here, and I select a good area like here, and I just paint. So I'm going to flip the image because it's easier for me, like I mentioned. So I get rid of this strain hair that I had here. And I mean, these tiny spots I can leave, but just for education purposes, I'm going to get rid of this as well. So B, S, reduce this. So you can use the bracket tools to also increase the size of the clone stamp brush. So I'm going to get rid of this here. And tiny spots here I'm going to get as well. Okay, so press R to reset the view, 0 to fill the screen, and I'm going to crop the image in a bit. So press C to crop, and I'm going to crop in something like this. I think this is fine. Okay, so enter, flip. Nice. So let's see where we come from and where we are now. So I'm going to disable all the layers. This is where we started from. What we did is that we corrected the colors of the skin with a very low opacity. Then we did the automatic dodging and burning. After that, we did the frequency separation. So what I want to do finally is I think I want to bring some contrast in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the levels. So I'm going to pull the shadows in a bit and pull the highlights in a bit more to make the image a bit brighter. And I can also increase the total brightness of the image slightly. I think this is fine. And what I realize here is that this section of this hand is a bit too bright, so I'm going to tone this down, create a new, so this was for general brightness. And this curves is going to be for the hand. So I want to make this a bit darker. So click here, drag this down a little bit, and I'm just going to brush this in where the hand is. So invert, select the B to select the brush, switch to the normal brush tool, and just paint in here. Okay, so you see that we got rid of some of the brightness here. It's a bit more pleasing. And also her eye is a bit too bright for me, so I'm just going to come here as well, do the same. So this is going to be for eye. I'm just going to tone this down a little bit. So drag this down a little bit. press here invert, and also brushing only into the eyes. So I'm going to reduce the size of the brush here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring some texture into the image. What you're going to do is I'm going to create a visible stamp layer by pressing Ctrl Shift Alt and E to create a visible stamp layer, and I'm going to go to image adjustments. Then I'm going to desaturate the image. You can also just press Shift Ctrl U. Then after that, I'm going to come down to filter, go to other, go to high pass, and I'm going to bring some texture into the image using the high pass filter. I'm going to press OK here. Then I'm going to choose the vivid lights. So with the vivid lights, you can see, oops, Ctrl D. So I'm going to turn it on and off so that you see how it was before. This is before. I'm going to go in a little bit deeper. This is before. This is after. You see that we bring more texture. So what happens is that sometimes when you finish the frequency separation, you lose some texture on the model skin. So I just do this to bring back the texture, the skin texture. So this is fine. Okay, so let's look at our before and look at our after. This is a very good transition. And I liked how this turned out. Before, after, before, after. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for tuning in, and please put your comments in the in the comment section. I'll try to address all the questions that are popped up to me, and also I'll try to make a raw file available. So I'll upload this on my OneDrive, and you can download the raw image to follow me during the editing to see how I edited this. Thanks and have a nice day. See you. Bye.